Hello ladies, gents, and everyones. It is Thursday, March 3rd, and we're here to talk about this week's space and astronomy news. This week, NASA announced the award for 3 additional missions to SpaceX for crew transportation to the International Space Station. These will be the Crew-7, Crew-8, and Crew-9 missions. As a reminder, both SpaceX and Boeing were awarded commercial crew transportation capability contracts back in 2014, and SpaceX completed their demo testing in May 2020 and received their human rating certification in November of 2020. However, Boeing's first Starliner mission failed to reach its objectives, and their second attempt was foiled last year by the valve issues in the propulsion system, and the next attempt at that mission is still TBD, although it's looking like it could possibly be this May. So for now, SpaceX it is! Remember back in January when I told you about a discarded rocket booster that was set to accidentally collide with the moon? Yep, that's happening tomorrow morning. Also, at the time it was identified as a Falcon 9 booster from the Discover mission launch, but it's actually since been correctly identified as the booster from the Chang'e 5T1 launch, which was a lunar mission that launched back in October of 2014. And while this is the first time that we've accidentally hit the moon with space junk, it's far from the first time that we've hit the moon with stuff. Here's a nice summary of all of the things that we have intentionally sent colliding into the moon. And that's not to mention natural objects that are hitting the moon all the time. All of which is to say, this does not represent a danger to the moon. However, it is something to keep in mind going forward, as space junk is certainly going to continue to increase. Let's check in on the web. Now, as cool as it was to see that first calibration image back in February, I did warn y'all that this is a really slow process, and yes, it's still ongoing. But there has been some progress. They've actually completed the second and third steps of a total 7 steps. So the primary mirror segments have now been roughly aligned, and those 18 points of light, which if you recall are all of the same star, went from being a kind of jumbled mess to now this nice hexagonal array. And then the images were further improved by making small adjustments to the mirror segments and to the secondary mirror. One thing that's really cool to me about these images is that you can see that even though they're all of the same star, each of the images is slightly different. And this is an excellent illustration of something called point spread function, or PSF, which is a hugely important concept in observational astronomy. A star is, in essence, a singular point of light on the sky, but the instruments that we use to observe that, including our own eyes, distort that light as they're capturing it. So every single astronomical observation is actually a combination of what's really there and the PSF of that particular configuration of a set of instruments. And here you see how each mirror segment is just slightly different, so you see how important it is to really understand your PSF when you're observing. The team also took this hexagonal array and were able to stack the images all on top of one another, so you get this beautiful combined image. And now this is very pretty, but this is just kind of a stacking. All of the points of light are now hitting the same point on the NIRCam detector, but each of the mirror segments is kind of doing its own thing. So there needs to be continued alignments, and we're talking nanometer level alignments here, so that the primary mirror can actually act as a single giant mirror instead of 18 small ones. The good news just keeps on coming as we pivot over to Mars and the trusty Ingenuity helicopter. Slated to complete just a few flights as a technology demonstration, Ingenuity is still growing strong and has actually now done 20 flights, with the most recent one being completed this past Friday. And its 19th flight, which completed back on February 7th, had to be postponed from its original schedule due to a dust storm, making it the first extraterrestrial flight to be delayed due to weather. Now, the most recent 20th flight was over 2 minutes long and traveled almost a quarter of a mile and reached a max ground speed of 10 miles an hour. That's faster than I can run. Congrats to Ingenuity. And speaking of Mars, happy landing anniversary to Perseverance. The rover landed successfully on the surface of Mars on February 18th, 2021. And remember that we got this amazing footage of that descent? Like, this still just boggles my mind that this exists. And the rover is still trucking along over there on the red planet doing very cool things. Just this week, it completed its first multiple sol drive. That is, the team here on Earth uploaded a single set of instructions for a drive that was split over 3 different Martian sols. This is more challenging for the onboard auto-nav system, as the errors in its position grow the further it gets away from its last Earth contact. But it went great, and this capability could help us get more miles out of the rover, especially on instances when the team on Earth isn't able to upload instructions every single day. So yeah, lots of love to Perseverance celebrating its first year on Mars. Its first Earth year. A Martian year is quite a bit longer, and so Perseverance won't claim that milestone until January 2023. Sorry to save the bad news till last, but yeah, it's hard to ignore the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine last Thursday. Now, geopolitics is not something I usually cover on this channel, but Russia has been a major player in the space sector, and this does have effects. In particular, the head of Roscosmos has been very vocal, thank you Twitter, about how international sanctions in response to the invasion could imperil space international cooperation. And yes, we're looking at you, ISS. Right now, Russia is only committed to the International Space Station through 2024, but the US is hoping to get buy-in from international partners to operate the station until 2031. And the station is about half Russian, and it would be extremely difficult to maintain without the Russian modules, which, among other things, help maintain its orbit and keep it from falling out of the sky. Now, the team currently on the ISS, which includes Russian cosmonauts, is continuing to operate normally, and it appears that upcoming operations, like the return of a NASA astronaut on a Soyuz capsule next month, will go ahead. But Roscosmos has stopped all Soyuz launches from ESA's Kourou spaceport in French Guiana due to EU sanctions, and have refused to go ahead with a planned launch of the OneWeb internet satellites without certain demands being met, which almost certainly will not be met. And just this morning, Roscosmos announced they will stop supplying rocket engines to the US in response to US sanctions. Boeing uses rocket engines for its Atlas launches. However, it does already have many of these engines on hand, although Roscosmos has also said that it will not supply any technical support for existing engines. So like so much else right now, we can't be exactly sure what's going to happen going forward, but it just goes to show space is not immune from international politics at all. I sincerely hope that all of you galactites out there are staying as safe as possible, helping one another when you can, and not committing war crimes. And that will wrap it up for this week, but thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you again next week. Have a good one. Bye!